So let me hit record there and then here. Harmony, welcome to the Progress Pure podcast. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. As we said, it's very, very exciting to be on here today. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, the main reason, obviously, I mean, I've messaged you about this and like told you a bit about how I want to talk about this, but I essentially how I came across you and your channel and everything was I was just on YouTube and I think it was one of those YouTube gives you a random algorithm video. Came across your
Yeah.
video, actually was first on getting rid of your smartphone,
Yes, yeah. That's
which I
a
was
big
like, this
yeah.
is awesome. Um,
Thank you.
and then went through like a binge of your videos and watched your video on why you decided to stop getting rid of your body hair or to start growing your body hair.
Yes, yeah, yeah. They're both like they've both been like huge videos recently, and I'm really excited that like a lot of people see the same as that, and they kind of like are interested in those subjects, especially like the smartphone one as well. That's really exciting and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
And to obviously this episode is about body hair and kind of talking about it and
Yeah.
why girls feel like they have to remove it. But just quickly I wanted to ask you, I mean, I guess what would be best to first do is introduce yourself.
Yes. Well, I am Harmony. I am, well, a 24-year-old YouTuber and writer. My most recent project was the Harmony Tarot for Growth and Healing, which is out now. And I wrote a book about Wicca and so like Wicca, the religion, and like witchcraft and paganism. And yeah, I've been making YouTube videos since I was 17. And like more recently has a lot kind of turned to being like spirituality and healing, like a lot more into like the more healing sector of videos. So my content's definitely had lots of different shifts throughout the years, but more recently definitely like the talking about healing a lot more and unlearning patterns and stuff like that. So yeah.
And how did you get into Wicca, paganism? I guess that kind of maybe saying spiritual path is a bit like whitewashing it, but how did you get into that?
Yeah, I discovered like that witchcraft was like a legitimate thing that you could get into and not just like a fantasy a thing that I'd heard about when I was like 14. My great grandmother was a witch,
No
and she
way.
like yeah and she like passed me down her deck of cards, and like later on, well, I didn't actually get them directly from her. They were like passed down through like my auntie and stuff like that. And so I ended up with her tarot cards kind of later on in my teenage years. But I got really into tarot just through like hearing about that. And then I kind of got into witchcraft and like just slightly, it was very small, like little kind of interest in being interested in the earth and just like connecting with the earth and everything like that. And also like growing up in like the middle of nowhere, it was like the perfect like setup for
Yeah.
something like that.
Trees and like
Yeah.
lakes,
Yeah, yeah. And like
spiders.
an old house, yeah, exactly, as well. It was like the perfect setup. But yeah, and then when I was 17 I like got into Wicca like properly, so the actual like philosophy of Wicca and the kind of what it meant to be Wiccan, and because it's a pagan religion as opposed to just being the practice of witchcraft. So it's kind of like it has more like there's different holidays and stuff for it that you can celebrate, and there's just like it's kind of a more collective like philosophy religion sort of thing.
Right.
um so I got into that when I was 17, and kind of I think I started making YouTube videos around the same time, but didn't speak about it until um like later, like I think maybe a year or two after I started making YouTube videos. And primarily for a long time my channel was just about Wicca and witchcraft, which is really, really great. And I'm still like a practicing Wiccan, but I'm kind of now like I'm very interested in like ego and identity and
Mm,
stuff like that, and I try to kind of just like identify myself as like a person. Like I
yeah.
try not to be like, like I am this, I am that, because I like to give myself like room to breathe within stuff. And I also like can like see how much beauty there is everywhere. So I don't like to just take on a like a definitive like this
Mm,
is me,
mm,
because I like to just kind of like read up about something, and there's something beautiful that I can take from something, I just kind of like take it on board.
mm.
So, you know, like I'm really interested in also like Buddhism and Hinduism, and reading up about them, there's a lot that I like just feel so connected to, as well
Mm.
as just like Wicca and witchcraft too. So I kind of just like to naturally explore spirituality in a way that's not like I am definitively this, I'm definitively that.
Mhm.
And that also gives me room to kind of be respectful of things like that as well, and be respectful of those specific religions, and learn at a slow pace, and not be like, this is me, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I think that when people, and like I've done this, obviously, I'm human, but like when you see people in terms of like a specific category, whether that's, and a lot of time it's subconscious, whether it's because of
Yeah,
social constructs in society that have just made us see people like this, like even with the body hair thing, it's
yeah,
very easy to kind of
yeah,
categorize someone of like, oh, she's got body hair, she's this kind of person. Or
yes,
when you see
yeah,
someone who's dressed, and so you can identify them as a specific religion and be like, oh, they're this kind of person. And what you
yeah,
said of, I'm just trying to be a person, I think is a really nice reminder of who we are, because a lot of the
yeah,
time you forget, you like put yourself into boxes and categorize yourself, and it's just like, dude,
yeah.
at the end of the day, we're just people.
Yeah, you take on like all these identities and all these like roles, and like a lot of the time like you can sometimes just blindly like be led into just believing that that is who you have to be,
Hmm.
and that's the only like kind of like that is your value
Hmm.
almost, as
Hmm.
opposed to actually just like seeing your value in being a human being, like just
Yeah.
like as you are, without like achievement, or without
Yeah.
you know, like a role, or yeah, like identifying yourself as anything.
Yeah, the achievement thing, what you said is really interesting. I was talking to one of my friends, and we were talking because like he's really young, and he had to make all these like really tough decisions in business, and he essentially went with his gut on this decision. But we
Yeah,
were talking about it, and he was like relatively stressed because the person he was dealing with is like really experienced and like the best person in their field and blah blah blah. But it's funny because when you like strip all of that away, and it's just like, but did you go with your gut based
yeah,
on how you felt in terms of like connection with that person?
yes,
And if the
yeah,
answer is yes, then it can make life, like decisions in life, so much more simple in a lovely
yeah,
way.
yeah, well definitely, yeah. And it's kind of like that's, I think, like the heart of like inner child work as well. I don't know if you've probably heard of it, but I don't know if you've got any experience in like working with your inner child or anything. But like, you know, as your like inner child, when you connect to it, you kind of have that feeling of just doing things because they feel right and
Mm,
good, and you're kind of not misled by the opinions of what you should do, or how you feel you should be doing things,
mm,
or like how society is telling you to do things,
mm,
as opposed to just doing what like makes like aligns with your heart, you know, like
yeah,
aligns with like how you actually what actually like feels good, or what like, yeah, you kind of just act like in a more pure way, if that
yeah,
makes sense. You kind of
yeah,
act on like a more like higher level
yeah,
with yourself than you do when you're thinking about all these other like
yeah,
judgments, or you
yeah.
know, yeah,
It's so crazy because then I guess on the one hand, if you strip it down to, okay, so then you can only really make decisions in life based on your gut, really. I mean,
yeah,
obviously there are some other factors as well, in terms of
yeah,
like, are you going to hurt other people, like,
yes,
etc. But then if you do go with your gut, what is to say that that is the right thing? Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it's,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
but
And like
then,
I think,
yeah,
yeah, I was about to say, I just think like you have to kind of, I feel like getting to know yourself is a really important part of that as well, and getting to know your values,
yeah,
because then when you get your values right, and you get like, or like right to you, or get your values like in a wise place, I
mhm,
would say is probably the better way to phrase it, in a place where you feel like they're coming from like a wise like intentional, and they have good intention behind them, then that kind of, when you like going with your gut, you like build up an inner trust, and you're like, well, I know that the intention behind this is good.
yeah,
And then most of the time you kind of can't, like, even if you go wrong, or you feel like a mistake has been made, like you still follow that like good intention, so at least you had a good intention, you know, like
Exactly.
yeah,
I think as long as you have good intention, then the rest will kind of take care of itself.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I feel like that's why it can be so hard when you're a kid or when you haven't really grown up yet. And obviously, you know, even when you're like 50, 60, there's still growing up to do.
yes,
But
yeah,
when you're a kid and you do something wrong and your parent tells you off or whatever, it can be
mhm,
so painful because, you know, as a child, most of the time, I would hope you're not trying to cause anyone pain or do anything
no,
wrong.
yeah,
So
you're not,
when
yeah,
you
it's, you're
do,
like,
you're
what?
like, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, 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 exactly, yeah, and it's also, it's just, it's very like, it's very pure, it's very like just getting your intent, like intention is honestly to me like one of the most important things, like, but obviously like behind that you have to have done the work to like get to know yourself, to make sure that you're not just following your intentions blindly and being like, well, I didn't mean to do this, because that's like the whole growing up part, the difference between the inner child and like, you know, the adult is being like, well, I know that this isn't right, so I'm going to like listen to that like wise part of myself, as opposed to just like acting upon like straight up
Yeah.
like instinct straight away, like, you know, so yeah, there's like a definite difference, but yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's where the whole you know, thing of being an adult as well, like the responsibility and at what point do you do the right thing? You know, like sometimes even if you don't want to anymore or you committed to something and you're like, oh, I don't really want to do this, like there's got to be a line of like, okay, well, I guess you did commit and like you don't want to let
Yeah,
someone down. But then again, to what extent do you do that without crossing your
yeah,
boundaries? It's a whole whirlwind.
yeah, it is, it's a whole like big thing, and you have to kind of like battle with like get a balance, I think that's it, isn't it, like just
Yeah.
getting a balance. If you're like committed to a job, you know, and you're like, I can't quit straight away, maybe you can work towards getting out of that job, but can't like be like, I'm gonna quit and have no money and
Yeah.
can't feed myself, you know, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. It is all about balance.
Mhm.
And so, okay, so you were into that from your grandma. And I wanted to ask you, so if to be a witch, because you said your grandma was a witch, right?
Yes,
Which is
yeah,
so cool. Like I've never
yeah.
heard anyone say that before.
Yeah.
Does that technically mean she followed Wicca?
No, so Wicca is like a standalone, like nature-based like religion. So basically, like being a witch, all you have to do to like classify to be a witch is to practice witchcraft. So
Okay.
you can be a Buddhist and a witch. You could be like, you know, a Christian and a witch if you want. You can find you can make it work. You can be like, or you could just, you know, just practice witchcraft. And it kind of like, you know, it can be like casting spells, chanting. It can be as little as just kind of like doing divination, tarot reading, you know, working with crystals. There's loads of different types of like things that people would consider witchcraft. It's kind of just usually working with yourself,
Mm,
the energy, the earth, and um, using that energy and projecting that energy and invoking and evoking energy.
mhm,
And that would be what is like considered a witch, you know.
mhm.
Whereas Wicca has kind of some more like parts to it, I guess. So for example, like a lot of Wiccans will celebrate the pagan holidays like the Sabbats. So
Okay.
Yule, you know, Ostara, May Day, like, you know, the equinoxes and like and things like that. And so they have like more of a built up kind of religion sort of thing. I say religion, but it really isn't kind of like a religion. Like I feel like Buddhism's the same, in which people call it a religion, but it's
Yeah.
really more of a philosophy. It's really more of like a lifestyle and like a way of life. And that's kind of how I feel about Wicca, is it's
Mhm.
like, it's not like rigid. You can bring your own approach to it, because there's nobody gonna tell you to be like, this isn't right, you know,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
can't do this. And lots of like Wiccans will work with deities and stuff like that. But again, it's not, it's like your own approach to it. You know, it's
Okay.
like your own kind of like, it's there, and it's got kind of things that you would necessarily do to classify as a Wiccan,
Uh-huh.
but it's not necessarily like straightforward, you know, and
Right.
like you've
Right.
got to all be doing one thing. It's like a, yeah, it's very
Yeah.
free.
Right. You don't
Yeah.
have like a 12 rule thing that's like, be good to thy neighbor. Do
No,
this, do
no,
that.
yeah. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, it's just kind of like basic kind of like belief system, but it's not like a, there's no like punishment. It's all
Right.
just literally like bring your own vibe to it,
Yeah.
like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was watching in one of your YouTube videos, you mentioned how you kind of fell into doing YouTube. Is that right?
Yes.
So how
Yeah.
did that come? And we will get onto body hair. I'm just really interested to know these things.
No, that's fine. No, I got into YouTube literally like I think I just made videos because I really wanted to make videos. When I first started doing YouTube, it was very much like I think I had like a flip camera, like a
Okay.
really old, like one of my mum's like flip cameras that had no sound to it, and I just did like a makeup tutorial with like captions.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was very like I just think I was just interested in it. Like I didn't really know what I was doing at that time in my life. I'd kind of like dropped out of college and I was working as a waitress, and I was like, I'm just gonna like try to do something like this, and not intending it to be a job or anything. Like it was literally just like genuine curiosity as to like what this world was.
Yeah.
So I kind of slowly started making just like silly makeup videos, and then I kind of didn't take it seriously, took a few breaks, and then I decided that I was going to just like try to make more consistent videos because my following had grown a little bit. Like I think I
Right.
had like 20,000 followers, and I was
Right.
like, 20,000 is like quite a lot. Like I feel like I should try to like push it a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then it kind of became my full-time career by the age of 19, I
No
think it was.
way.
Yeah, so I've been doing it for quite a few years now. I've been doing it since I was 17,
Mm-hmm.
which is like I'm almost 24,
Yeah.
so it's like quite a while doing
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. And so you've carried on, what you said you've kind of moved away from the kind of like Wicca videos that you were making, and that you're trying to do more things about the ego and being more socially aware and everything. But you
Yeah.
also, which I do want to mention because and I know I briefly mentioned to you this before, but I love like ASMR, tarot card, horoscope. I know it's not the same thing, but like I find all those things really relaxing. And I
Yeah,
saw
me too.
you have like a tarot card deck, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I have a so I released it, I think it was yeah, end of January now, and it's a specifically growth and healing tarot deck.
Okay.
So the like advice that comes with the cards is all like directed to helping you heal, or
Okay.
find growth and stuff like that within your experience, that you kind
Yeah.
of lay out in front of you. So yeah, it's like a very light pip deck. It's like got traditional tarot values where it's like got like 78 cards, but the the cards are all kind of modernized to
Right.
be like with the theme of growth and healing. So like a new approach on things like that, which is like a very exciting opportunity to do, because whenever you try something new, it's kind of like it's scary and exciting,
Yeah.
but it seems to have gone down pretty well. Like I'm really happy with the response from it and everything. But yeah, it's going pretty well.
And is tarot, excuse my noobness on knowing these things, but is tarot related to witchcraft at all?
Yes,
Yeah, it is.
yeah. So
Okay.
like divination, which can be like a form of future prediction
Hmm.
or like insight into your life, can be a form of like energy work, So like you kind of use your energy to pick out cards, and whether or not how you believe tarot cards work, whether you believe it's like a subconscious kind of like coming to the surface thing, or you believe that it's like energy kind of guiding it, it definitely relates to definitely relates to witchcraft in that sort of way, because there's lots of other things that you can do with tarot cards that relate
Hmm.
to witchcraft, like you can do tarot meditation, you can kind of use them to direct like a spell and stuff like that,
Right.
but like people alone do consider like divination to be a form of witchcraft, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, it
So
does make sense.
yeah.
It's so funny, because there are all these stereotypes of people, and like bringing this back to body hair, but the whole idea of witchcraft and kind of going against what society's norms are, like obviously witchcraft is massively going against like society's
Yeah.
norms. And so
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me, you know, if people kind of associate, oh, you know, somebody who has like body hair is also like a hippie and like follows witchcraft because it's going against, you know, like all those kinds of
Yeah.
norms. But it's such a weird thing and we'll talk about the history about it in a second, but it's such a weird thing that something so natural as body hair has now become something which is seen as rebellious.
Yeah, it is strange. Like I find that about witchcraft too, because paganism was the main religion in the UK, or like the main belief system in the UK before Christianity
No
was.
way.
So people would believe in have pagan beliefs as opposed to like Christian beliefs. I'm not overly educated on it, but it kind of, so every holiday that we have is based off a pagan holiday. So well, Christian holidays I'm talking about. So for example, Christmas is Yule, it's like the winter solstice. Easter is Ostara, that's where like the name kind of comes from. And all of them have original meanings that to me make a lot more sense, because, you know, obviously I have like the birth and, you know, death of Christ or whatever.
Yeah.
But back then, like Easter was like the celebration of like the beginning of spring, light returning to the earth.
No
And that's
way.
what they would celebrate. And then like May Day is well, that's kind of stayed the same, but not everyone celebrates May Day, obviously, but it's fertility. It kind of like talks about how, you know, that's the time of the year where all the animals are like, you know, like, yeah, basically, yeah. And you will celebrate sexuality, and you celebrate your sexuality and like the symbolism when it comes to sexuality. So that's like it's very healthy in a way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and then like Christmas is like darkest day of the year, which is like, you know, the darkest time of the year. And yeah, so they have like all of the holidays that we celebrate that are Christian based are based off pagan holidays.
Wow.
So which like a lot of people don't know, and then like it's always like quite crazy. It's like, really? But yeah, like, you know how we used to celebrate the sun before we celebrated the birth of Christ, because it makes so much more sense, because it's like they're natural phenomenons that we're like, whoa, like this is crazy that every year we get food and it's because of the sun. And it's like, you know, and then it's like, yeah, well, we better honor this sun, because it's like we can't understand it, so we should probably like give thanks to it and be like, yeah, thank you thank you for giving us dark as well, and thank you for like, you know, having fire, and, you know, which is where all the deities come from, is they are based off personifications of nature and human experience. So it's like, yeah, so like I personally, like, I believe in energies and stuff, and I believe in like the representations of deities and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think like gods as being people like in the sky as much as I do like energies and kind of, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, like, so it's kind of goes with the subject of that, because I think somehow like the practice of like paganism, I don't know if it was like criminalized or something, but I definitely like the shift happened there, and then it became the main like religion became Christianity.
Yeah. And because, you know, which is where I think there was, I don't know when specifically, I know in the States it was like Salem, England or something, and like where they burn all the witches to the stake, and they would like tie a stone to you and then throw you in a river, and if you sunk and you died, then you were not a witch. But if you, wait, what was it? And if you floated, there was some like really stupid thing that's basically, you're gonna die anyway, like you get either burnt to the stake or you drown innocently. And it's funny because those things in those times are often just a way to control and repress women, because back then it was like, oh, you have a bit of a righteous crazy aunt, or like not even necessarily crazy, but just somebody who it might be more outspoken or doesn't want to comply with like the rules and regulations of that town, in which case then she might be a witch and maybe we should ban her. And
they love blame.
Lovely. You know, and it's interesting, like having the difference between, I mean, I'm sure there are loads more differences, I don't know what they are, but like between paganism and Christianity, if you're going from worshipping like a natural thing that we can all see, then to worshipping one specific person, where it's like suddenly a hierarchy and everybody at the bottom is like less worthy than this person at the top, which like can mimic a
Yeah.
lot of structure in society of how powerful people would potentially want things to be structured.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's very like crazy, and like unfortunately like it is all been like a big fearful thing. Like I think like a lot of it has been like fear to control women, and like men in the UK were also burnt for being witches, like
Oh,
weirdly, but it was all a blame thing. It was all like women first, and if something went wrong and they had family members that were men, they'd
yeah.
also burn them just in case, you know,
Right.
like it was like a sort of thing. And like actually there was like a long time where like wise women, which is what they were known as, were respected at like for a bit, but then if anything went wrong, it would be like, let's take that one woman, old woman down who doesn't have
Yeah.
a husband or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it would always kind of, it would always be like that. Like I've read like a lot of like unfortunately really like sad stories about women who have just like been accused of witchcraft or are known for being a healer, and then just being like killed because they don't have a husband, or like
Right.
someone died in the town from like a plague or
Yeah.
something, you know, like it was always like that. And it was all like a societal like structure of like,
Mm.
unfortunately, like control like a lot of the
Mm.
time. And I'm not saying Christianity is now like that, and I don't think at points is, I don't think the foundations of it has always been like that, because I
Mm.
know Christians that are like perfectly open and loving, and a lot of Christianity weirdly somehow feels similar to like elements of paganism and Buddhism and stuff like that in the foundation beliefs, but there's just been so much that's brought to it that has been like not positive and
Right.
kind of, you know,
Yeah.
and kind of skewed with it. And there's modern people being like, hey, let's not do that anymore, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, let's leave that.
Yeah, let's just leave that behind and try to, you know, like focus on the actual like goodness of this.
Yeah, it's funny what you mentioned with the wise women, or sometimes there are periods in society where women are really deemed, and a lot. I don't want to just blanket like tribes, but like where you have someone in the tribe who is potentially a healer, and a lot of people, men and women will go to them as a source of like wisdom and strength. And one thing, and I'll pull it up now, but one thing, when I was looking into the history of female hair removal, because when I initially, before I looked into it, I thought, oh, this is clearly something that, well, not clearly, but I thought, my guess was this was potentially pushed onto women by advertisers, which there is definitely a time in history when that was the case,
Yeah.
from when advertising shot up. So let's say in 1920s, like America, 30s America. But it's actually, they talk about Cleopatra in this, and I'll read out a brief bit of this, because be interesting if you have heard of this as well. But
Yeah.
so essentially, this website, and this website is Women's Museum, the history of hair removal is Women's Museum of California. And they said, so hair removal for aesthetic enhancement of women's bodies has a long history. It talks a bit about what hair is for a bit. And then it says, the practice of removing female body hair is not new. It can be traced back to ancient Rome and Egypt. Some of the first razors made of copper were used in Egypt and India around 3000 BCE. Egyptian women removed their head hair and considered pubic hair uncivilized. Upper class Roman women of the 6th century BCE used tweezers, pumice stones, and depilatories, which is, I think, like powder or creams that you can use to remove hair to
Yeah.
achieve the desired degree of hairlessness, while Egyptians of Cleopatra's time used a sugar mixture in a method similar to waxing. Elizabethan women removed their eyebrows and hair from their foreheads to give themselves a longer brow. And then it talks about Charles Darwin, 1871 book, Descent of Man. And he talks about, which was really interesting, that how Homo sapiens have less body hair than their predecessors, I guess, because less hairy mates were more sexually attractive. So it was really interesting, because I was reading it, and because now it's so normalized for people to have for women to not have hair, that you would associate that with like a sexual attraction. But I always thought that that was a social construct. And then when I was
Yeah.
reading this, I was like, is it all a social construct, or is that partly, are we attracted to people with less hair? I don't know.
Yeah, like I think so. I think like my personal like opinion on it
Mm.
is like, I feel like it's both. Like I feel like there's definitely like social construct, and definitely like the need for removing body hair has come, like all of it has come around quite recently. Well, not quite recently, but definitely more recently than that.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and the kind of like, you know, need to remove it all has definitely come from that.
Yeah.
And there's obviously been like a lot of time periods where like it's been fashionable and then it's gone out of fashion and like gone into fashion, like you said, removing the eyebrows. But then back then they obviously removed the eyebrows and had like hairy bodies, which like isn't shown in period dramas and stuff like that, which I always
Yeah.
laugh at, because I always like see them and I'm like, where's the hair?
I
Like
know.
like I'm like, where's the body hair? And then like, for example, like ones that are like directors that are female that direct films like Portrait of the Lady on Fire, they have body hair
Yeah.
because it's like an accurate representation of what it was like at that time. So I think it is like fashion coming in and out. And then there obviously is that element of like natural attraction.
Mm.
But the thing is, I feel like we're so far down the line from that, that it's like there's so many things that like we would have done back then, including like murdering people,
Yeah.
you
Burning
know,
witches.
yeah, burning witches, you know, that no longer relate to that time period. And also I think that sometimes that can be like a dangerous way of like saying things, because like a lot of the time people are like, I'm just more like it's natural to have hierarchies of pretty. Like I think that's something that I have heard a lot as well, is there's just more naturally pretty people in society, and then there's less attractive people because it's a natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that comes from fashion and also just our culture. You know, like unfortunately like the beauty myth that we have going on right now is very inherently racist, because we like prioritize like, you know, skinny white
Yeah.
females, and you know, with like very like small features to
Yeah.
themselves, than we do like accepting like anybody else that has anything different about them. And also like I feel like we're at a point in society where we can separate people's worth by the way that they look to their actual core value, you know, and we can kind of now separate that like identity of like having that identity and their actual human value. Like I feel like we know enough now to be like, that's not the
Yeah.
most important thing about someone, is having that like attractiveness. And also you can see the kind of the very like vast opinions of it by the fact that like, so everyone's attracted to something different, you know, like we all say that there's like people that are more pretty than others, but then at the same time it's kind of like there's so many people that have like their own what they look for in a partner. You know, some people like would prefer people with body hair, while as some people would prefer people without body hair, and people prefer like different, like they have things that they're attracted to that other people just don't understand why they're attracted to that. You know, we're all attracted to different people. So it kind of like, to me, I kind of think that there is a mixture of that, but then at the same time it's kind of like using that as a way to be like, this is wrong, you know, you shouldn't do that because I want to be attracted to you, and I'm not because of that. Is like, well, I'm not here to just be attractive, I'm not here to be looked at and to be pretty. I have value beyond that. And I think it's like perfectly beautiful and acceptable for women to make choices beyond like whatever they want to do to express themselves, as long as it doesn't have a definitive hold upon you, like a one that makes you doubt your self-worth because of it. Which is like what it happened for me, is like I had this belief in my head that if I didn't shave, that I was basically going to be stereotyped and be like, this person is unattractive, they're a hippie, you know, which I probably already had that stereotype on me anyway. But like I had that in my head, you know, they're somebody that's like dirty or like doesn't take care of themselves and stuff like that. But then I was like, but I know that I do. Like I know I take care of myself. So I know that I like, and also like the experience of growing my hair out and using deodorant and expecting to be smelly, and then being like, I don't smell any different to like what when I did without. So a lot of people were like, it's better for hygiene, but then it's like, no, it's actually not. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any difference. And yeah, so it was a very long-winded answer to the question. But yeah, I think it is like I think it is a mixture, but then I also think people need to get out of that mindset of being like, we still think like primal, you know, instincts, because like if you're thinking back then, like there's so many weird things that would have happened back then, and also so many things that have always been wrong with society that sometimes you need to separate yourself from
Yeah.
to actually like actually go with what feels right for you, because
Yeah.
it's yeah, a lot of it can get messed up and skewed, you know,
Mhm.
and like not everyone's intentions are always pure, and like
Mhm.
you have to kind of you have to work out what feels right for you in that
Mhm.
scenario, and not expect other people to live up to that your version of normal, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I think that's a really good point, that you can't really look at, even though there is a history of female hair removal, you can't really look at it like one continuum, because
No.
the reasons why they would have done it back then are so different. And it's so different to the point where they might not even have considered body hair in the same way that we think about it now. So
Yes. Yeah.
and the reasons why now we potentially remove it are so far removed from then. So it is massively different. So with you, it sounds like you made you had to make an active choice that was like, I I don't want to be kind of like an object of sexual, not necessarily sexual desire, but like I don't necessarily feel like I have to comply with shaving my body hair, for example, in order to be good enough for
Yes.
you. Was that something that you had kind of over time you had thought about, and then one day you made the decision, or was it like one day it happened? What was the kind of process of that like for you?
Yeah, well, I it's been like a long process for like me healing from a lot of the ideals of myself that I had in my head, and also just like a lot of trauma and issues, you know, as we all do.
Yeah.
But like it was when I actually started to properly embark on a healing journey. So I had a mental breakdown when I was 19.
Mm.
Well, I had just moved out for the first time and I had a really, really rough time. I started going to therapy, consistent therapy, and I had been in it for about a year and a half. I had gone sober, so I don't drink or anything. I'd gone sober about maybe like 7 months prior to when I feel like I properly started to heal.
Mm.
But I kind of just I came to a point with myself last year. It's almost a year ago now, where I was noticing that there was still a lot that felt wrong with my life. I felt like I was doing all the right things. I felt like, you know, I was taking my CBD every day. I was practicing my non-anxiety, like CBT, like exercises. I had an amazing therapist who is a Buddhist as well. So she like had like a lot of um like amazing insight past the point of just being about, you know, CBT and coping. It was
Mm.
like she kind of really got me. Like we really just got on to get well, we really do still get on together. I still see her. But and I was doing all these things that definitively were right. I had a good job, you know, like I in my eyes, I had tried my absolute hardest to be the perfect person, the perfect witch, the perfect like beauty standards. Like I wore so much makeup, which there's nothing wrong with wearing makeup, but for me it wasn't a like creative expression. It was
Mhm.
more of a like, I hate my face, let's
Right.
cover that up, you know,
Right.
sort of thing. I had like done everything I possibly could. I had kept at a size 8, not in a healthy like, oh yeah, exercise, like I'm going to exercise frequently way, in a way of like, not just let's not eat very much if you're feeling like you are, you know, gaining weight or something. And I was still at this place where I was like, I feel like I'm doing everything right, like what
Mm.
society says, like do this, you know,
Mm.
do this if you want to feel good, and it wasn't working. And it was around my period, and I had like a feeling around my period every month for like 2 years prior to that, after my kind of mental breakdown, where I would just have this overwhelming feeling that I wasn't living life in the correct way. Like it was almost
Wow.
like I felt like I was like uh doing my job, but I wasn't really putting my heart into it anymore. I felt like I was just doing everything that I possibly could to avoid the like obvious pain and the obvious things that I was burying, and the patterns that I was kind of living in. And it was like it came up as an emotion every month.
Mm-hmm.
And then it didn't really like, and then instead of going to do the whole thing that we are told to do around our periods and ignore those
Mm-hmm.
emotions, because we know they're heightened, you know, they do kind of, sometimes we take them out in ways that aren't necessarily like the way that we should handle them, mainly because we've been told to ignore them, and then we have to suppress them and get more and more confused, and
Mm-hmm.
you know. And instead I was like, I'm just going to listen to these emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just going to work out what the hell they mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is all this coming up, like why do I still feel like I'm going in one direction in my life? And I started to kind of slowly peel back layers of things that I had learned and ideals that I had learned that had built up on me, layered up on me, and made me progressively more anxious and depressed and hated myself more. And I just started to dissect them. So I started with like, why do I feel like I have to wear? It was like silly things. It was like almost like an identity thing at first. It was like, I didn't know who I was. I had no idea who I was. I'd kind of just lived in a way that I was just expected to. So I had no idea who I was. So at first I was just still caught up in like, who am I? You know, like, who am I? Who am I? And I thought that there was going to be like an end goal where I knew who I was, and it was going to be like, this is me. But that's obviously not how it works. But like I started to slowly peel back these layers. And the first kind of few layers that I peeled back was the how I looked, because I had, that was something that really got to me, was and also like my job and stuff as well. There was like quite a few things that came up, and I started to really dissect and make effective change that I know had needed change for a while, and didn't care whether I was going to risk losing it because I was so bloody miserable. Like, you know. So I one of the things that I had been told my whole life was to shave, and also to like, I wasn't told to wear makeup. I think I felt that pressure because I had grown up like a skinny, tall, ginger girl that wasn't developed, that wasn't basically called attractive when I was young, which is so ironic considering so many people are like, ginger hair and freckles, you know. It's like, it's like the thing now. But like, but like back then, it like, I was ugly as a child, you know, like I had like gappy teeth, and like I was like not attractive, you know, a child. But yeah, so I started to kind of unlearn those things as a part of that. And I had always wanted to grow out my armpit hair. Like at first it was just literally like, I realized that I had just kind of gotten into that habit, and I was just kind of told to do it. I was just told, you know, boys have hair, girls don't. And I got really upset. I remember the first time I was told to like, or like not even told to shave, but just kind of like it, I realized I had to, when I had like armpit hair at school, and like someone pointed it out, and I was like, well, yeah, like of course I do, like that's what happens, isn't it? Like, you know, I was just kind of like, yeah, like I do have armpit hair, like I've, you know, I'm 13 now, like I of course I do, you know. Like, and I kind of didn't really realize it. And then I think I had like a conversation with my mum, and my mum was like, I think she even gave me like the option. I think she was just like, well, like I shave, you can, you know, like it, you know. And I did, and then I just kind of got into the habit of shaving everything, like all, you know. And
really, from the age of 13 you would shave everything just for yourself?
Well, it was not even like it was just what I thought you had to do.
Right, okay.
These girls and maybe like a boy or two had pointed it out at school, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm not supposed to have this. Shave everything, you know. And even my arms, I used to shave my arms, but not like, I think I only did that for like a few years, and then was like stopped. But yeah, I shaved like absolutely everything for such a long time. And then when I kind of was coming into, I was like, why do I do this? Because like it doesn't make me happy. It's not like a form of like how I express myself. It doesn't feel like a healing it doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
It just is something that I do out of habit, and I've
Yeah.
never dissected. So I started to grow out my armpit hair
Yeah.
firstly, and just kind of try out that. And I didn't tell anyone, I didn't ask anybody for their opinions, because I was like, someone's gonna give me that, like, I need to trust myself with this,
Yeah.
and kind of,
Yeah.
start to kind of grow out my armpit hair and my body hair. And I started with my armpits, and it felt so good. Like, I was
Wow.
just like, like, this just feels like natural, and like kind of like me. And I
Yeah.
started to kind of just slowly do that. And then I obviously stopped wearing makeup, because I just did it out of pure habit and never actually did anything creative with it. It was just like, I hated putting it on daily.
Right.
I was like, why do I still do this? So I kind of stopped doing that. And same with like my hair, I used to straighten my hair
Yeah.
because I thought curly hair was ugly.
Yeah.
And I have like frizzy, ginger curly hair. And I was like, I stopped doing that too, because I kind of was just like, I'm basing so much of my value in this, in this
Yeah.
like identity, in this like appearance, like, and it doesn't like help me, it doesn't help my heart, it doesn't
Yeah.
give me more like happiness. It almost in a way hinders me, because I
Mm.
hold it so valuable. I
Mhm.
hold that opinion of me and that like desire of me so valuable, that it's actually doing damage. So
Mhm.
that's where it kind of started, is me slowly peeling back layers of myself, and actually just kind of surrendering myself to that, and forgetting what I knew, and
Mm.
almost just like learning it again, like
Mm.
relearning things, and like
Yeah.
rediscovering what I actually made me feel good, and what actually helped me like express myself,
Yeah.
as opposed to just listening to what everyone else
Yeah.
had to say on the subject.
It's crazy because talking about how you felt when you had your mental breakdown, like of feeling like you didn't know who you were, um, it's really interesting because I feel like not that that is I'm surprised not loads of teenagers have like mental breakdowns, because when there are so many things in society that until you start questioning them like you did, that you just do and you comply with, and that could really be going against the grain of potentially who you are as a person. And I know that is also a combination of like nature and nurture, and it's not like you're born and you're like, this is who I am, and society
Mhm.
obviously will shape us to a certain extent, and that will be okay with a lot of people on a lot of levels. Like for example, it sounds like when you had to first shave your armpit hair, well, you said that you actually wanted to grow it out. Like there was, when you first had to shave it, it annoyed you, or like it bothered you.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people who like when I first shaved my armpit hair, I have actively thought about like, would I want to have hairy armpits? And for me personally, I think I wouldn't. Hairy legs, I'm way more inclined to be like, yeah, I have hairy
Really,
legs. But
that's
like,
interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, but it's funny because I guess, yeah, it's surprising how much you can lose yourself without questioning those kinds of things, and how it
Mhm.
sounds that you kind of got to know yourself better, or reclaim who you were in a way by doing that, which is an amazing thing. Were you, when you did those things or started to peel back those layers, whether it's makeup or body hair, at any point were you like, I'm afraid now that, and this is crazy, I'm using the word afraid, but like I'm anxious or worried about the fact that maybe I won't be seen as this desirable person anymore? And how did you mentally deal with that?
Yeah, well, like I think like a lot, I was very worried, but like if I'm being honest with you, so I have, my boyfriend is like a devoted Buddhist,
Okay.
and he is like, I think it helped having him by my side, being like, this doesn't change anything, like in a way, like to have like a I'm saying this, but have like a man being like, I will never hate anything you choose to do that is natural, like, or that just feels good for you. Like, I can't imagine wanting to have any control over what you do with your body, because it's
Mhm,
just weird. Like,
mhm.
it's weird that people are so controlling about other people's bodies. It weirds me out that you, like, anybody would have enough interest to go to somebody. I really care about your body.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not thinking about mine, but I really care about your body specifically. It bothers me. Like I can't, and I just think like anybody who feels that way, I'm like, that's like not a me problem. Like
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like it's not a me problem, but I think like a lot of the confidence came from the inner work that I was doing around that time as well, and kind of learning about the kind of the identity and the ego, and kind of working through the kind of expectations that I had for myself, and again like actually unlearning those things and actually unlearning those patterns and finding a more like peaceful like place in my mind, and a more like mindful place of just wanting to like enjoy and live life. But in
Mhm.
order to kind of get there, you need to like heal, and you need to like peel back those layers and stuff, and get to a place where you feel more balanced, which I feel like takes years, you
Yeah.
know, to kind of get to know yourself enough. But like I think I learned about like did that inner work like, and I'm still doing that inner work, but it kind of started around that time as well.
Mhm.
And I started to look at other people and how like, and I think it helped looking at my own um opinions on other people and the expectations that I had for other people,
Mhm.
and then realizing that that judgment I was placing on myself too, and kind of understanding that every judgment you place on other people is just a reflection of yourself or an expectation that you have for yourself. And
Yes.
when I started to kind of think about that and look into that, I was like, oh my god, like, you know, I clearly have like all these like expectations for other people that I also put on myself. And that's, firstly I was like, that's not right. Like I don't want to do that to people. I don't want to make people feel like they can't move around in themselves. Like I don't feel like people, I don't want to make people feel like they have to uphold standards that they're not happy with. So I think I kind of, I got very comfortable with the idea of not being seen as a like a, you know, like a, I didn't really care whether
Yeah.
people would see me as society's like idea of attractive anymore, because I was like, who am I, firstly I was like, who am I trying to impress, and are these people the type of people that I want to attract in my life? Are these are the type of people I actually want to share my life with?
Yeah.
um or are they just people that have their own shit going on, have their own patterns that they're not learning about, that they're not looking into? And to also not judge that, because I get it and I
Mm.
understand it. Like I
Mm.
also like, and also like I think it's beautiful that everybody has their own way of healing. Like for you, you just said, you know, example, you are happy, you want to shave your armpits, but you're like more inclined to do the leg hair.
Mhm.
And that is like a perfectly beautiful and acceptable thing to do, that makes you feel more like yourself or more
Mhm.
comfortable. Whereas, you know, for me, I want to shave my like hair off, and other people may be like, actually, I want to shave because
Mhm.
it for this and this reason that helps me, you
Mhm.
know? So I think like I was kind of, I just started to realize the obscure like societal views that people had, and was
Mm.
like, I just don't care. Like if someone's gonna come up to me and be like, I hate your leg hair, I'm just gonna be like, okay, like what do you want me to do? Like what, like you seriously want me to do something about this? And like, and nobody would anyway. Like it,
Yeah.
that's the funny thing, is I think we get into our heads that people are gonna look at us and go and put a judgment on us. But the thing is, even if they do, that's absolutely nothing to do with you. Like it's
Yes.
absolutely nothing to do with what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
It's something to do with what they're learning from and they're experiencing. And I think just knowing that, I was like, it freed up a lot for me, you
Wow.
know, and it freed up like a lot of emotions, like, and just like a lot of like uh not worrying so much about like how I dressed as well, and kind of just started to wear stuff that felt like made me laugh, or you
Yeah.
know, added value to my life, as opposed to always like feeling like I needed to be like trendy or like
Yeah.
fashionable or whatever, you know. And I kind of like let go of a lot of that, and just start like, my like way of healing was to embrace that kind of wild like inner child, just kind of getting back to my core, you
Yeah.
know. That was how I broke free from that sort of
Yeah.
way, in a physical sense. But then also the inner work is the really important thing, you know, like
Yeah.
really important thing.
And it sounds like now, I mean, now, not just sounds like you really have an amazing mental attitude towards that kind of potential behavior. So, for example, if somebody was to judge you or anything like that, the mindset that you have of well, one, you just be like, okay, but it clearly kind of speaks volumes of their own stuff that's going on inside their head, or how they feel about themselves, and then just projecting that onto somebody. Like, how could you be aggressive or judgmental over someone who's just be living the life they want to live their life, and like just being natural, really? And did you have to go through, because that's an amazing mindset to get to, but like, did you have to go through moments of, I know this is bit practical, but like having hairy legs and going outside and being on the tube or whatever and being like, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with it. Like, did it take time to get to that mindset?
Well, you know what? I actually think it really helped being in lockdown, because like when I started to do that, like I wasn't really going out or anything. And I think like I always tried to commit to things. So like if I'm not sure, I'll like do a month, I'll be like, do this for a month.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, you can like approach differently, try something different, whatever. So I think it kind of helped, but like I think I started to like attract certain people that also kind of didn't have those views. So that kind of made it easier in my immediate like circle, because it was kind of like no one really cared, and it was
Right.
just kind of like whatever, just be yourself. Some people do shave, some people don't. Like it was very not even like spoken about. Like it was almost like a normal. They just treated it as normal. It
Yeah.
was just like, or maybe they were thinking, oh, but like they just didn't say anything. But it didn't really matter, because it
Yeah.
was just like, I don't care. I'm comfortable with it. But I think for me, like the legs has
Yeah.
been the most interesting one, which is funny because like but the armpits was like easy breezy, because like
Yeah.
I don't often wear like strappy tops or
Sure.
anything. I'm more of like a t-shirt kind of person. But the legs, I like wearing dresses,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, if I wear like a dress, is it going to make it for some reason look not how I want it to look, like, or is
Right.
it going to like make me also have quite a lot of tattoos, and I was like, is that going to look weird, like
Yeah.
having hair growing through my tattoos? And like I thought about that quite frequently, and then I think like I slowly just started to get into that. Like I thankfully like haven't had any weird stares or like any like anything like that. And I also am somebody that when I'm just walking, I'm not really thinking about what other people are doing anyway. I'm
Yeah.
very much like in my own world, that it's
Mm.
not like I'm not thinking whether people are staring at me. And like I have quite a people stare at me anyway, because I don't, I think it's just like my hair maybe, and my
Yeah.
like I have quite like big eyes and like
Yeah.
curly hair, so people stare at me anyway, and I've always had people stare at me.
Oh.
So it's kind of like I don't know what they're staring at, so it's just kind of like whatever, like I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't really struggle with that in particular. Like I think the weirdest thing was like online. I had like a few people just like, I've had a very positive response, but there was a few people that were kind of a bit like, I just don't get it. Like it seems like there's a seemingly attractive girl on here and she just has armpit hair. Like for me, like anybody, she was like, even men, like I don't like it when they have like a hairy armpits. Like I just don't get it.
Wait,
And I was like,
someone was saying that, and they said, and even when men have hairy
yeah,
armpit?
yeah, even when men have hairy armpits,
Come
yeah,
on.
they were like, yeah. And I was just like, I was just kind of like, yeah, but like it doesn't, I'm not here to just like be looked at again,
Yeah,
like
yes.
like it was just
Yeah.
like, I'm just not here to just be like of like just be like evaluation, be like I only care about the way she looks.
Yeah.
And like I'm not about that anyway, so clearly I'm just not the right person to gel with you. And I
Yeah.
still like have love for people like that, and I try to withhold judgment when it comes to things like that, even though on the bad days you sometimes can't help it anyway.
Yeah.
But I try to, because I get it. Like
Yeah.
I would never be somebody that would comment. I've never been somebody that comments on anything, but I like have definitely had those emotions come up, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, picture the state that you were in
Mhm.
when you had those emotions, and just picture what was going through your head, and then understand that it's okay. Like it's
Mhm.
okay that they have those emotions, but you have to trust yourself over
Mm.
anybody,
Of
like
course, yeah.
absolutely anybody.
Yeah.
And I just kind of just put that into perspective and was like, I don't really care if one person doesn't like the way that I look. I don't care if everybody hates the way that I look,
Yeah.
because just just talk to people instead. You don't have to
Yeah.
just like be obsessed with like the visual appearance of everything when there's so much more going on. You know, I'm
Yeah.
like, there's clouds in the sky. Like, why do you
Yeah.
care about my armpit hair? Like, there's
Yeah.
literal floating balls of like air that make shapes in the sky. Like, what are you doing looking at my armpit? Like, there's so many armpits in the world. Like,
I
just
know.
look at the rivers, look at the
Yeah.
birds.
Yeah,
Like,
go for a
no,
walk.
yeah,
Like,
go for a
chill.
walk and like I'd like look at the bloody like I like the first time I looked at the sky, I was like, it's huge, and I'd like never like properly felt like I
What?
admired it before.
First
You
time
know, like
ever.
no, but you know when you see something, you don't really see it, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
And I just remember looking at the sky and be like, oh my god, this is crazy. Like, go and do that.
Yeah.
Like, go and
Yeah.
like work out, you know, like go see like the like amazing stuff outside,
Yeah.
and you know, who cares about my armpit?
I
You
know
know?
it reminds me of I used to have really, really bad acne when I was like 17 or 18. And I remember always, you know, feeling like, well, like I had to wear makeup because I was like, people gonna like look at my face or like whatever, and it's gonna be really embarrassing. And I have to try and look like I have perfect skin because, you know, that's like what everybody has. And it wasn't like I was doing anything, like I wasn't like being really dirty or something to have, like it was natural, you know, and I was just
Yeah.
going through like that time. And I remember like either people who would comment when I was just like, this is so like, I can't believe someone is commenting on my
Mhm.
skin, like as if
Yeah.
I don't know, like I can't see it, or I don't know how to deal with it, or maybe you know how to deal with it better, like in this weird way.
Yeah.
And also just it was interesting because it was kind of like a, I don't not like I could have regretted it, but I'm kind of
Mm.
happy I went through that because I think you can really come to terms with, and it's crazy that even like acne and body hair are things that like I would even compare the two because literally everybody gets body hair and not everyone gets acne. But it's one of those things that I had to actively like try and constantly train my brain to be like, if someone is judging me for this right now, it really does say more about them because
Yeah.
like this
Yeah.
is just a naturally normal occurring thing. And like if someone's gonna like think I'm weird or not want to be my friend because I have acne, like fuck you, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And also like I feel like when I spend time with people that I like really connect with, I don't notice like obviously like it's a thing that is there, but it's not something that I'm like thinking like, oh my god, that person, you know, I'm just like with them. I'm just
Yeah.
connecting with them. I'm not like looking at and being like your appearance is because it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like, and I actually like weirdly like I haven't had um acne, but I have gone through phases where I've had like a lot of spots like around my
Mm.
chin. Like I tend to just get them like here, like, and
Okay,
a lot of
interesting.
them, like you know, in like kind of stuff like that. And I went through a phase of having that a lot, and I actually decided not to wear concealer because I was like, just like screw people that
Yeah.
sit there and go, you've got a spot. It's
Yeah.
like, good. Yeah, more like good. Like, what do you want me to say to that? Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, no.
Oh, I
Like,
know.
I don't care if you like my face. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. I
Yeah.
like my face. And it takes a while to get there though. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a bloody long process. But
Yes.
I think after a while I was just kind of like, I'm sorry, but like get on with your life. Like
Yes. Yes.
go and live. Like,
Totally. And I think
yeah.
that's one of the most amazing things, especially about being a woman and growing up. Like growing up in general is great, but being a woman and being able to, because so much of the time when we're growing up, especially when we're around 13, 14, you know, and getting older, and we're
Mhm.
told that you have to be pretty, you have to do this. And it's really all for the male gaze. And you don't think
Yes.
about that. Like it's all so
No.
that you're attractive and then someone fancies you, et cetera, et cetera. And then I feel like as you get older, you get to a point where you're like, they're flawed anyway. Like, since when did we
Yeah.
treat them like freaking gods? Like, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to be with these guys. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna be myself. And if that's not acceptable, then I'm cool about being on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I feel exactly the same way. And I think like it kind of came to that point where I also got like comfortable with being alone and being by myself, that I was also like, I don't care if nobody has interest in me in that sort of way. Like I'm fine with just existing as a person, and I don't need people to be like, you're so pretty. Like I because now if someone's like, you're so pretty, I'm like, thank you. But like I don't care. Like I
Yeah.
just like I you know like it's fine. Like I have so much more to give than that. And even if people do value that, I don't I'm not like hateful with that, because
Mm,
it's still something that you're so embedded, it's so embedded in us all, and it's
mm,
so like embedded to like be attractive to men. And it's just like, well, what, like, firstly, like being bisexual when I was younger, I think I always had like emotions like, yeah, but I like want that girl to think I'm pretty, like, like, you know, and then by that you're kind of like, you kind of work out like a lot of women have the same feelings as that, and then you kind of develop like healthier relationships with that. But I remember that so much, and that has been like my life, was like attracting men or trying to be attractive to men,
Yeah.
you know. And then I'd have bad relationships where I'd get cheated on, you know, like silly young ones, but then they would affect me subconsciously because I would be like, oh my god, like I'm not good enough, you know. It'd get in there and I'd be like, oh, I'm not good enough. And then I just kind of like thought and sat there and thought, but like I now understand that they have emotional issues. Like it's not like, it's not me. Like I'm like, how could I have physically took that upon myself and blamed myself for that, for not being good enough, when I'm literally like, I like try my absolute like hardest for all these years to be like a perfect woman, or whatever the hell that means. And if I trusted myself from the start, I would have been so much happier and attracted actual people that care about me, you know, and actually like value my existence past the point of just my, like, how I look, you know.
Literally. I'm reading have you heard of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius?
No, I haven't. No.
So it's basically just a book on Stoicism, and it's just a lot of Stoic philosophy. And I feel like a lot of Stoic philosophy relates a lot to Buddhism.
Yes.
And there's one bit in it where he talks about how pointless it is. They're very like short kind of things he writes, but one of them talks about how pointless it is to describe things as beautiful, like in the sense that it doesn't add any value to something if you point something out and call it beautiful, you know. And it just in the sense that you can have a problem. And I feel like with life, it's so easy to get into mindsets of this is a bad thing, this is a good thing. And actuality, like something that seems like a bad thing can actually be a good thing a lot of the time, you know, further down the line. And something that is beautiful might actually be ugly in like a completely other sense. So it's just like putting value on these things is kind of pointless to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's so many like layers to things. Like I try to like redefine the word beautiful, and when I describe things as beautiful, I'm not describing their like physical being, I'm describing their like radiation of just like good energy. I'm just like, that's beautiful, like you know, that, you know, like that river is beautiful, or like, you know, this moment is beautiful, you know. It's kind of like not trying to not describe the physical appearance, because I just don't believe that beauty exists in a physical appearance. I just don't think it, and I don't think it should, because I just, you know, like like the things that I really value are not, have nothing to do with how things look, you know. Like it just kind of, I just feel like it's like that it has really good points. Like Stoicism does have really good points in things like that, with when it just says like there's almost no such thing as bad and good in a way. Like it's almost just like just as it is, like it almost just as it is. Like every time I am looking like for my intentions, I no longer define them as good or bad intentions. I just define them as wise or unwise. I try to be like, is this wise? Like is what, you know, is my intention wise? You know, that makes so much more sense as going like, this is bad, like, bad, you know, because it can be so flawed. Like those words can be so flawed. You know.
And I feel like it takes away, and it's easier to say it when you're not going through like massive upheaval and like someone's not reclaiming your house and like all this stuff, but like you know, life is I think in a way it is just a series of different kinds of problems, not necessarily in a bad way, but just things that you just have to try and work out. And along the journey, you're just figuring stuff out about yourself as you go, because it's like how you deal with those things. Like,
like exactly. Like I think like the, like even the like pandemic like is something that just happened. Like, you know, it is like a tragedy in so many ways, and it feels like extremely like weighty, and it is, but that is just something that happens, isn't it? Sometimes people get ill, sometimes these things happen, and it's painful, and we're allowed to process that and feel emotion about it and feel that like weight and that pain from it, like you said. but it is something that it's not normal, you know, like there's been loads of pandemics and we're just experiencing one. And like I think it's just when you put things in perspective like that, okay, like you said, on bad days it doesn't matter, you're just like, fuck this, I'm not gonna listen to this hippie shit, I'm just gonna go and sit and cry. But that's good too, you know, that's got its place as well, you know. So yeah,
which is also a big thing about growing up. I think if you can get to a point where you're like, I'm really sad and I'm just going to be sad for a while, and then but I won't overindulge the sadness, you know. You can be like self-aware to it, and then you're like, okay, we can now move on, like.
Yeah, exactly. And you can just like have like I love a healthy cry, like I just feel like it releases so much. And I almost like, what I love about like Buddhism and Stoicism is the reaction. It's basically like, feel these emotions, feel them, but then your reaction is the important thing. You know, if you're angry, it's great to be angry, scream into a pillow, punch a pillow, sign some petitions online, go to a protest, get angry for like the good shit in life, and then let it go, and let go of it. You know, once you've kind of released it, you can kind of train yourself to like allow yourself to let it go. You know, that's why I meditate every day, is it helps me just like acknowledge that I feel something and then let it go. And same with like all of these emotions that we're talking about when it comes to like, you know, even if someone comments on my body hair, it's like I just let that go. I don't hold on to that. I'm not going to hold on to somebody's opinion of that, because it's kind of like, what am I going to do with that? Like, what, you know, nothing. I've made this choice. I trust myself to know that I'm doing the right thing. You know, if someone comes out with like this fact that's like, everybody in the world needs to shave their hair because for some reason there's something that's happened and then everyone's hair is going to kill them, like, yeah, fine, maybe I'll be like, I'll shave my hair, but like until that happens, like, it's not harming anyone. Like, and if people feel like it's harming them, they need to kind of like reevaluate why they're harming themselves. That's the thing, they're trapping themselves within those things. I'm not doing that. So it's kind of like you know?
I do feel like a lot of the time how you feel about other people, and like I had to go through this, you know, it's a lot of like self learning and self-healing, but when you do feel a certain way, it is often a projection. You know, that if you feel judgmental towards someone, it is just a projection sometimes of shit that you just need to kind of work out or think about. And not everybody has to do that, but I recommend it.
Honestly, like it feels like a lot of the time, like everything we do is pretty much a projection of our own experience and stuff anyway. And as long as you're like aware of that, like I think it kind of comes up in relationships, like that's where it kind of shows, that's where they shine. And you can kind of start to reflect on how you're reacting to things and why you're reacting to things, and you're like, why do I, like, you know, why do I have insane jealousy issues? Like, why is this coming out in this sort of way? And you're allowed to like acknowledge it and be like, I obviously feel this feeling. But I think the important thing is what I learned through like CBT is great for like handling stuff. You know, it's great for like anxiety and trying to like deflect from anxiety. But when I started to do EMDR and do like deeper inner work, it got to the core and I started to understand that too. So when like these emotions came up, it was almost like I felt like there was so much charge to them, but I'd never actually looked into those emotions. I've never actually been like, why do I feel this way? Like, why am I feeling so much like pain, and why does this have so much emotional charge to it? Instead of just going, I feel this and this is it, it's sometimes like, well, how do I actually feel about this? And is it coming out in the way that it's coming from the root, you know, or is it just like confusing itself and then it's coming out in like a different way? Like you hear about people that get bitten by dogs when they're children and then they have stage fright, you know, because it's like a different reaction and it can come out in strange ways. So when I started to look deeper, that really helped me actually understand where it was all coming from, and then made things so much easier to handle, because then the CBT was on top of that, and it was like a nice became like a nice balance of just understanding them when they came up, but then also knowing how to handle it, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And made me think a little bit about how with I think there's a certain extent which is like, to what extent did this come from my childhood, or to what extent does this bother me on a level that's like really authentic to me, and then on what level am I bothered by it because of, and this is related to the body hair thing, because of society has put on me. Like, even for
Yeah.
example, a lot of people with I think monogamous relationships, girls get this all the time. Like, I used to be in it was technically an open relationship, although we never called it that, and people would come up to, and I was really happy with it being an open relationship. Like, I wanted to date other people, but I wanted to be
Yeah.
with this person. And I remember people would come up to me and say like, oh, but you must be so pissed off that he didn't ask you to be his girlfriend. And I'd be like, and I wasn't, but it would make me think, oh
Yeah.
shit, should I be pissed off because he hasn't asked me to be his
Yeah.
girlfriend? Like, maybe I should be. And then I'd probably get a bit pissed off about it and then be like, wait, I am okay with this. What am I doing?
Yeah, like there's so many, and also like, especially with like romantic relationships, there's such an ideal of what it is and what it means to be in a romantic relationship and what love should look like, and
Yeah.
everybody like thinks that it should look their way or like how it's portrayed to be, and it fucks things up. Like, for so long I believed that that was the way, like that love was supposed to be, is just one way, and if it
Yeah.
didn't have all these little elements, if they didn't constantly post pictures of you or do all this stuff, that it was like a problem. And I was like, that's craziness, because that is just like such a modern concept as well.
Yeah.
And then when I actually like started to, like, that's the whole thing about getting to know yourself, like your true self, not like putting loads of notches on your belt and getting to know like or creating an identity, but actually getting to know your soul and how you actually feel about things. And then being open to change and giving yourself like room to take on new things, is so helpful, because then when you do that, if someone comes up to you and goes, you bothered about that, you just go, no.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
no,
Exactly.
like, I'm happy with how things are. And then people
Yeah.
can be like, oh, that's weird. You can be like, well, I don't care, like,
Reflection
like,
of you and your own insecurities.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, throw it right back at them. But
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's all it really comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah, it literally is. And obviously, we've gone massively past the time, and I appreciate you
I don't
still
even know what the
staying with.
time is.
Okay,
Like,
good. Okay,
sorry.
good. But as we kind of wrap this up, one thing that I wanted to just briefly mention is where the whole body hair from, let me see it, from like the basically how advertisers, why we kind of shave our body hair now, and like some of the language used, so that in case you are thinking like, oh, I just don't like body hair, like maybe this is potentially why. So you have, in the early 20th century, there was a cultural change of the definition of femininity. In the 1920s, the new feminine idea based on the body, that started to change. People started revealing more of their body, including using bras and makeup and dieting. But actually I think it was 1903 was when I think the first disposable razors for men were used. And then around 1908, there were 3 industries which advertised female body hair to be offensive. And that was largely because they just wanted to expand the market, which is every kind of like business strategy of how do we make our market wider. So male hair removal products had become successful because of World War One initially, and they wanted to expand its market. Then you've also got women's fashion industry producing kind of sleeveless evening gowns, rising hemlines, and then also the mass production of women's magazines. And so you have women's magazines, which are not supposed to like make women feel better, but they're supposed to be a catalog of where advertisers can display things that they're advertising, and then women have more purchasing power from like the mid 1950s, and so have more control over buying those things. And then there was literally language tied with advertisements of women shaving their bodies, saying words like, where is it, they were describing female. Oh wait, also wait, one thing this is also mad, which I don't know if you know about. After like the Second World War, so I think this is around 1942, the amount of where is it? Here we go. Hosiery production plummeted in 1941 when 97% was used for US War Production Board, or US War Production. So the US War Production Board curtailed silk and nylon stockings, and so leg makeup was actually introduced because they couldn't
Oh
wear
God.
tights.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So a lot of women had to start shaving their hair on their legs because the makeup wouldn't stick. But then in addition to that, then a lot of adverts started to come out describing female body hair as being embarrassing, humiliating, not feminine, and then just increasing or just using words to basically promote females being hairless to sell more razors
That's
and short
crazy.
skirts and stuff. So yeah, just a little bit of history, which is interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, that is really interesting. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And you can see why it has become such a like normal thing and also why people feel like embarrassed about it. But
Mhm.
again, it's such a personal choice.
Personal
It's so
choice.
personal. Like
Yeah.
no one should have any other opinion on it
No,
ever. Like even your partner shouldn't have like opinion on what you're doing with that.
no,
Like
no.
I'm a strong believer of that. Even if you have to stay with them for ages, well, maybe they're just not right for you. Like,
Yeah,
do you know
yeah,
what I mean? If
yeah,
that's not like if you don't agree with that, you know?
yeah.
But yeah.
It's amazing when guys, like I've slept with guys before and they've commented on like, because I haven't had body hair and then being like, yeah, I way prefer it, like when girls don't. And I was just like, great, I'm so glad
Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
ask
Yeah.
you. Like,
Yeah, yeah, literally. Yeah, I've had that so many times as well, and
yeah,
I'm just like, well, I that is exactly why I'm so happy I do not like attract people like that anymore. It's one of the
yes,
benefits. Is like I'm
yes.
like I will never attract so, and if I do, I'm just like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Like like why would I give someone that energy? Because it's so like it's so unimportant, and even like your friends. Like if your friends like have a negative view on it, it's kind of like, well, what am I doing giving you like I don't need guidance from
Yeah,
you in that
yeah,
regard. Like it's
yeah.
my body, you focus on yours.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, funnily enough, I'm 24, 25, and I haven't died
Yeah.
up until this point, so I think I
Yeah.
know how to live my life, but
Yeah,
thanks.
exactly. Like and I'm happy as well. So that's
Yeah.
also the other thing. It's like just focus on what you're doing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. Well, Harmony, it was so nice to chat with you.
Yeah, it was so nice to chat to you too.
So
Thank you so
nice.
much for having me
Yeah, my
again. It's
pleasure.
been really, really nice chat.
My
Really enjoyed
pleasure.
it.
And I'll put the description of your channels and your tarot card deck in the bio in case anybody wants to kind of check that out as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
No
Thank
probs.
you.
I'm going to end the recording